Hey everybody, it's Elizabeth. I just wanted to pop in here and talk about sun exposure in your landscape. So if you're new to gardening, or even you could be experienced gardening and you've just kind of fumbled at figuring this detail out. So when you order plants, they tell you what the light requirements are, and that is how much sun they need to thrive and do the best they can do. If you are getting plants that flower, that matters. If you're getting vegetable starts that need to produce vegetables, that matters. If you're buying fruit trees or pretty much everything other than evergreens, it matters because they need X amount of sunlight every day or they're not going to do their job. So one thing too is like fruit trees. Like we've got this fruit tree over here. This is a peach. She's thriving in that location. If I had put her behind my house, she would not be thriving. She would be green, but she wouldn't produce fruit. So that's really important. Hi, Benny. So in order to try and help make it a little bit easier, I was looking at some of the apps that are out today now, and I'll put some screenshots over here. I was just outside playing with it. It's called Sunseeker. You can see when you first go in, you can subscribe to a basic or a premium account. It's pretty expensive, $14.99 a week. I think that's just for basic. That might be premium, but anyways, that's expensive if you're not using it for like a lot of different things. I would say just go with the free version. I just looked at the free version and tried it out. You put in to pick your location. You can either have location turned on, or you can put in your city and state. It'll pull up a map, and then you can zoom into your actual location, select it, and say set location. From there, you can if you go to the camera view, it's going to immediately turn on your camera. You have to give it permission, and it's going to show you the path of the sun on today's date. So I'm looking at this in the fall. That doesn't really matter for me because like I'm not going to be putting anything that needs to thrive in the fall. I want to know where can I put some new berry bushes I got in a place where they will get plenty of sun come spring. So you can see on the app, you can go into kind of go back to the home screen where you've got your location, and you can put set date. And from there, you can pick any date in the past, probably even future, but I just looked back to this last spring. And then it set the date to that. I went back to the camera feature, and I'm looking at where the sun comes up over here on this side of our property and the angle in which it goes in. And so you can basically sit there and play with that toggle on the bottom of the screen and toggle between, sunrise, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 11, and watch that. And as you see the sun move on your camera, then you move your camera to follow it over your actual landscape that's in front of you to show you what time that sun is going to be there. So before I go into any more details about that app, I just want to say the best way for sure to know how much sun exposure you have in any one part of your yard is to do a little Google research and live there for a year and pay attention. Most people will tell you observation is the best way to know. Because yes, this app can tell me the sun goes over this way. And because using the camera feature, it's able to take into effect that although the sun comes up over here and it goes this way, at a certain time, it's going to get behind this tree. And see, I've got all these trees over here, and they make a difference. Also as well, across the road, we've got all these trees here. So when the sun comes up here in the horizon, it's going to take a couple hours before it gets here. And this right here, that time, is when my front yard starts getting full sun. So that's why observation is key. But I wanted to look at the app for someone who's like super new to trying to understand light requirements for plants, is that you have to consider that. So what the app did for me, even though I've lived in this location for 6 years, I know where the sun comes up, and I know where it comes up and down different times of the year. And also, another thing that you really learn from observation is that although the sun comes up right here on this side of me, when it comes over up like this right here, this bed, is still always year-round shade, full shade. Because the furthest over that the sun comes, I'm not right in front of the house, I'm trying to give you a really good explanation. Because if you get this app and you see it on the map, I want it to, or not on the map, but on the photo, I want it to help make sense to you. So the sun, if I'm right in front of my house, the sun comes up like this way, It goes over this way and back. It's never on this side of the house to get sunlight directly on that. So if it's anywhere from here to that way, then this part of the house is going to shade this part of the yard always. So you could say like, oh, it's just science, but trust me, everything in gardening, it can be more confusing than it needs to be. Oftentimes is pretty darn confusing. But so when it comes to light exposure, so one thing I learned from observation is I used to think this front bed was part sun, because my husband had what do you call them, hostas planted there before I ever moved in, and those are shade loving plants. However, what didn't dawn on me until a few years later is they always get really haggard in the summertime and in the fall, and they hardly ever flowered, which means they were not thriving. In order to thrive, hostas need shade. So I since relocated a lot of those around here, and they've done completely better. I have no hostas in the front anymore. So I can figure out, and you can too, based on that app and looking at the camera feature, the sun comes up over this tree here in the summertime, or early spring and summer, comes up over this tree about 7 in the morning. And then it's going to be directly in the middle of the sky, noon, right? Because that's the same for everybody. And then it's going to go probably maybe about 1 o'clock before this right here is in the shade. Okay. And again, you figure that out by figuring out in the spring, where does my sun come up? Follow the path across the sky. Where does it go down? And then what things could be shading it at any point in time? I've mentioned, if you've watched me for a while, I have 2 newer raised beds in the back of my cottage garden. The back of my cottage garden faces west. So it gets only direct setting sunlight, but there's also woods back there, so it gets very limited, maybe an hour of direct sunlight, and so things really struggle to survive back there. So for trying to figure out that difference, again, like I said, through figuring out those different details, where the sun comes up, the path that it goes, stuff like that, then if I've got 7 a.m. to 12, I got 5 hours of sunlight in the front of the house. So then if the sunlight at the porch here is going to end at 5 hours, everything from here and this way is going to get all day sunlight. There's no shade here preventing it from thriving. And so, yeah, so anything less than 4 hours is considered, I think, part shade. Anything less, I think I said that wrong. I'll put a little chart up with the exact different descriptions so that you know, because I don't want to misspeak. But yeah, and there's not a lot of things that really thrive in full shade, although there are some. I mean, there's a lot, but there's not a lot that flowers, and there's no summer vegetable crops that thrive in shade. So so for me, trying to figure out, okay, I've got some berry bushes I want to put in. They need 6+ hours of sunlight. So they cannot go anywhere in my front landscape here. They might live, but they're not going to thrive and produce berries. So I've got to put them over here. Yeah, because I mean, I would love to have them over on this side of the house. That'd be lovely, but that's going to be mostly almost full shade, so they won't do there. And then this bed is just chaos and nothing else will fit. So I'm going to have to incorporate them over here somewhere, and they'll get plenty of sun over here. But then you get into, okay, this area is pretty dry. So that's when you've just got to learn different things about your landscape. And then when light gets tricky is if you are somewhere where you have obstructions on maybe 2 different sides of you, then it really gets tricky. All right, so like this is my cottage garden, and it is not full sun. It is sometimes shaded by the house, sometimes shaded by the building, sometimes shaded by the oak trees. So because of that, now I put this used to be lawn 3 years ago. I think this was just lawn, and it was decent lawn. We literally didn't use it for anything, which is why I turned it into the cottage garden, and I love it and I have no regrets. However, none of this is full sun, and A lot of plants need full sun. So if you've been with me, you've noticed that every year in the front of these 2 beds, I plant my tomatoes there. Now we've got a lot of tomatoes in the in-ground garden too, but I always like to have some here for, like, this is my kitchen garden. This is right outside my front door where I can go pick 1 tomato if I want, or harvest herbs or whatever. So with this, I get the full sun in the front here because the sun comes up directly behind the camera here and it goes this way, and they're gonna get sun until about 2 o'clock. Because of where this tree back here starts in relation to these front beds. Now everything further back in the cottage garden is basically, as of, first of all, it's getting dappled sunlight in the morning that's coming through here, but all the plants in the front are blocking the direct sunlight. So it's getting dappled sun, which is considered almost like shade, but it's a little bit of sun. So the plants can soak up that sun, but it's just not full sun. So it's getting the dappled light through the plants, and then when the sun gets overhead, just like in the back, the middle is getting maybe 1 to 2 hours of direct sunlight, then it's in shade the rest of the day. So my cottage garden really is mostly, like, I'd say 70-80% part sun, which sucks because it hinders me from growing a lot of things in there I want to grow. I keep trying, and some things, you just trial and error, things fail. Now, as opposed to that, we've got our in-ground garden over here. And again, to remind you, sun comes up over here, it goes like this, and it goes back behind the property. So this is full on sun. Summer day, this garden gets all the sun there is to get. There's nothing in front of it except way over there in the horizon. So the sun will come up, and then from like 7 all the way to probably, you can see we've got trees back there, but they're pretty far away from the garden. You can see they're probably about 200 feet. So those actually get, that garden gets sun until, well, in the summertime you have to think sunsets actually sets around 9, so probably around 6 or so. It's actually at those trees back there, and again, that's something we've learned from observation. But so yeah, it's getting 12-13 hours of sun. That makes those plants produce a ton more, but also you have to keep in mind, when you've got a full sun garden, no obstruction on them days in the summer, your hottest days of the summer, wherever you're at, even if you're like up in Michigan and your hottest day is 82, the hottest days wherever you are, your plant has no break from the sun until the sun goes down. And so they are just taking on all that heat, and it's really hard for them. So if you have a literal full sun in-ground garden, you want to water really well in the spring, get your plants really well established, get their roots in, and then water frequently in the summer when you have your really hot days, because they get no break. Because they get no break from the sun. So it's really hard on them. As opposed to, you know, I can get some sun in the front of this cottage garden, but when that sun gets up to like 2-3 o'clock, I know that my garden over here is mostly shade, and my plants are taking a deep breath from all that heat all day, because in the shade the temperature is 10 to 15 degrees cooler than in direct sunlight. So my plants love that, but again, they can only thrive to a certain point because they're not getting enough sun. So it seems so complicated. I hope this information was helpful. Check out that app if you want to, for research and to figure out where things go. Anyways, if you have any other gardening questions for me to answer for you, drop them in the comments. I would love to help. If I know the answer, if I don't, I'll research it. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day.